Welcome to the Founder Hour podcast. This is your co-host, Pat.
And I'm Posh.
And today we're hanging out with Lavinia Errico, founder of Equinox. Thank you for being on the show.
Great.
And thanks for having us in your home.
Yeah.
Excited to have you on the show and talk about your journey and your personal story, kind of mixed with your business story and how all that kind of came together up until what you're up to now. So we always like to start off kind of from the beginning. So tell us a little bit about where you grew up and what you were like as a kid.
Okay, great. So I grew up in Hackensack, New Jersey. I come from a big Italian family. I have a twin brother. And this is where it's really going to get you. My mom had 5 kids in 2.5 years because she had 2 sets of twins.
Got it.
And it was myself and my brother Vito. There's the Italian name. Then my brother Danny is a year younger. And then we have 2 twin sisters a year younger. And then a sister a year younger. So we really had...
There's 6 total or?
6 kids, yeah.
Got it.
And we really had like our own soccer team and dodgeball team. And
So your parents weren't like expecting all these kids in the house and it just kind of happened.
Just happened, yeah.
So I guess, were you like, where in line were you?
I'm the first. So my brother and I are the first. And and then everybody came after that. And my mom used to joke and say, I think my kids came out with sneakers on because from the minute we were born, it was as if we were very active. Sports was a big part of our life growing up. I don't remember us ever like sitting down. I mean, it was like you came home from school, you did your homework as quickly as you can, you went outside to play. And it was always for us either, we were riding our bike, we were playing dodgeball, we were playing kickball in the front. We were always moving and going. And it was sort of like part of our family culture.
Where did that come from, though? Like, were your parents or anyone in your family like athletes or just like really into, I don't know, exercising or just?
No, not really. Yeah. I mean, no. I think it's your nature and your nurture. I think it was just our nature that we just by nature were young people that really liked to be active, and that was a big part of my life. I started dancing very young. Probably by 4. So movement and expressing myself through movement and being around people, my age, then we were constantly, moving. And then I remember in 5th grade, it was me and one other boy. We ran the fastest in the school. And that was my first awareness that, like my body, I'm good. I'm good. Like I could do something a little different. Like prior to that, I didn't really feel that because I had 2 brothers that were great athletes. But that was my first awareness as a girl that I was like faster than other girls and I was stronger than other girls. And then I just remember in gym class when they used to have those ropes courses and I was always the first one up to the top. And
you're that person.
Yeah,
I remember that person.
I was that person.
I remember that because I was the last person. So I always had a great view of that person.
Oh my God.
But hey, sometimes I'd rather lead from behind. So that's how I view it.
It's to celebrate who you are, right? That's the beauty of it.
Is there anything you wanted to be like specifically when you grew up at that time, or were you just sort of just taking it by day and then didn't really have like a set, I guess, vision or goal for what you wanted to do?
10?
I
mean, like when you're a kid, like everyone wants to be, something.
No, I didn't have that. I love dancing, and I really would say, I want to be a dancer. I want to be a dancer. But I love dance, and I was fortunate enough to dance professionally. And the truth of it is once I started dancing professionally, it really took a little bit of the love out. And that's when I sort of pivoted really quickly and said, I'm not going to do this as a profession. It was a hobby, or better yet, it was the 10-year-old that declared that.
Yeah.
And now I'm like 20, I'm not going to keep that going.
Yeah. I actually heard something the other day. I was listening to a podcast. It was about that kind of topic of, how following something that you're passionate about might not always be the best thing because oftentimes, something that you think you're passionate about, you start getting deep into the weeds, whether it's a class or like an article or something you're reading, and all of a sudden it just feels like work and it's like tedious and it's not fun anymore. And I feel like that's kind of what happens with a lot of situations.
Well, also it shifts into a different situation. When you're dancing, running home from school and grabbing your shoes and going to dance school and performing with what today would be, I guess, a dance team, that's all great. But then once you start getting paid for it, there's just a different energy. There's a different vibe. And for me, I just thought, but I really celebrate what dance did for me, because that's why I loved moving my body. That's why I started exercising at a young age, because I also wasn't the typical dance body. I wasn't like naturally long and very, very skinny. So I had to start working out probably by 12, to just maintain my weight. So that was kind of interesting. That got me a little bit obsessed, quite frankly. And then I went into that place where working out became a bit of an obsession for me. I definitely took it too far.
Were you still in New Jersey at the time?
I was in New Jersey, and then I went to college out here. I went to USC.
Oh, we did too. Fight on.
Oh,
Wow, this just made everything so much better.
yeah.
This just made everything so much. You don't even know.
Wow.
I had a fear that you were from UCLA or something. And I was just
no.
this is gonna be
I
tough.
will tell you though, my son went to UCLA. Could you imagine how challenging
So that's
that
the one
was?
thing we
I don't
don't
know what
talk
to
about
tell
on
you.
this podcast.
I'm like,
So that's
a
banned.
Bruin?
Yeah.
I'm gonna have a Bruin in my house. I mean, like,
I'm curious, you talk about how you had this obsession with working out and with dance, and you're 12 years old. What was that? What did that obsession look like? I mean, was it taking over every minute of every day, or was it something that you would do after school? What was?
well, when I say yes, I worked. I did. I danced every day. That was for sure. But the obsession wasn't so much the dance, it became the body image. So I definitely got into a situation where I was never thin enough. And that, kind of took me down a slippery slope for a while on my image. And, I would just remember drinking one of those drinks. I don't even remember what they were called. They were these like protein drinks you got in a can, and I would have like 2 of those a day. And I just wanted to be skinnier and skinnier because, again, I was big boned. I didn't have that body type.
And this is like in your teens, like when you're
Yeah,
in
I was
high
in my
school?
teens, and then I started working out. This is kind of a story that segues into the whole working out. I was one of my girlfriend's older sister worked at a health spa where we lived, and she would sneak us in so that we could.
Because at that age, you can't really even get a membership.
You
or
had to be
anything.
16,
Yeah.
So it was like we'd sneak through the back door, we'd go in, we'd work out. And because I was a dancer, I could get the choreography pretty easily, and I would actually go home, and on the days that we didn't go, I would put my sisters, who were a little bit younger, in the room and say, come on, I'm going to teach you this this class. And they would be like, no, Lavinia, we don't want to take a fitness class. And I was like, no, I wanted to teach them, So I'd make them do this exercise class. And then one day we go to the spa, and they said, I'm sorry, the teacher's not here to teach today. I was 14 years old. I said, I'll teach it. And the manager was like, you're not even really supposed to be in here, sister.
Right.
Like, you're going to teach it? And I was like, what do you know how to teach us? I said, I teach my sisters this every single day. And I got up in front of the class, taught it, and I thought, I love this. Like, I really enjoyed the whole dynamic of it. And that's sort of...
The issue that you bring up about the body image, and we don't have to talk too deeply about it, but it's intriguing because it's something that came up before, like, even social media, where you see a lot more, women having, and I'm sure even men having body image issues, right? How did you kind of get away from that?
Well, first of all, I think I had a mom who was very present, and she was really there. And I remember when my dance teacher, the first time she sort of alluded to the fact that maybe I needed to lose a little weight. And it was really because a costume didn't fit. They would measure us in January, and then when the costumes would come in June and the costume didn't fit, and she's like, Lavinia put on weight. And my mom's like, there's no way she put on that much weight. And then when my mom measured the costume, she said, this wasn't made
well or right.
Right. But that had already gotten in my head. That Lavinia gained weight. And I was at that age where, like, you put on a little bit of weight before you before you grow. So I
like
could,
preteen, like
so I could
It's
feel
like
that
not something you have too much control over. It's not like what you're
it
eating.
wasn't
or
what
you're
I was
not.
eating. It
Yeah.
certainly
Right.
wasn't
Just
the lack
happens.
of
Yeah.
exercise.
talk about nature. That's definitely
And then, of course, there were just some beautiful dancers in this dance group that were all very tall and very lean. And of course, at 12, I knew that was the desired look for a dancer. So I had already had that in my head, and I was already sort of, again, like obsessing about it, becoming very careful about what I ate. No carbs, no this, and I. But my mom would have conversations with me about it. Like she was just right on point with, Lavinia, you just eat healthy, and she would really kind of meal plan it with me. And it really wasn't about my weight. It was just about making healthy choices. So I sort of like did that and then kind of pivoted, skipped through. But I will say, like when I look back in my 20s, there was always a thread. Like I worked out as hard as I did, and I worked out like a maniac, quite frankly. And it was about having a great body.
Yeah.
Because
You always think about it. I mean, like I'm a gym rat myself, and
Really?
I mean, sort of. But like you just like you look internally, but also like other people who like constantly every single day are just always stuck to that regimen of going to the gym, and they don't waver, nothing gets in, and you wonder like the psychology behind it, like what is really, and I think for people there's different. One is. Part of it is the image. Part of it is just the health aspect of feeling good, and then part of it is the mental aspect of it's like something that you can control, right? Like it's something that you're like in competition with yourself constantly, and I think that all those things together. I think someone said it was vanity, sanity, and health, which was interesting.
they couldn't rhyme that third one, huh?
Yeah, no, they couldn't.
Yeah, but a lot of times people, first of all, we get so bogged down on this outside identity.
Yeah.
And that's not really where joy or happiness really lives. I mean, we know that today, that's not there. It's on a deeper level. Excuse me, but it's not always easy to tell the 22-year-old that. So I think it's shifted. I think young people today, they value other things other than just looking great in a little bikini.
Yeah.
I believe there's.
You mentioned between the time that you did that class as a young lady, you're what, 13, 14 years old at the time?
14.
14 years old. What did you do between that time and your 20s when you came to LA?
Well, first of all, I was here and
So that was
went
here.
to college. No, so that was in New Jersey.
Right.
Because when I left after I graduated high school. And then I did start, I had a girlfriend who took me to Jane Fonda had opened up a studio on Robertson, and she said, I want you to come with me. I know you will love this. And I went with her, and it was really expensive for a college student to go to Jane Fonda. But she paid, and she's like, I want to treat you this. It's your birthday gift. I think she bought me like 5. And the truth is I loved it.
Yeah.
I got in there and I was just like, oh my God, I love this. But then again, I was also a dancer, so I could like memorize it. And then I got out and I was writing notes, and I would literally practice in my dorm room. And then that's why I think like that entrepreneurial spirit was just inside of me. I mean, first of all, I worked at my dad's deli as a kid. My dad had delis in New York City. Because my mom had so many children, there were, like, when we were on spring break, the 3 older ones were going into the city to go to work with dad. Because to have 6 kids home would have...
She would have lost her mind, yeah.
Yeah, she would have lost her mind, and everybody would have been on hooks.
Yeah.
You mentioned you were dancing professionally. Like, was it? So you were
did.
doing that throughout high school and college?
No, I was in a professional group when I was young. And then when I was my junior year in college, the Rockettes, I don't know if you know the radio, they came to LA. So I auditioned for the show and I got in, and I was able to work my classes around that. So I did that. And then afterwards I stayed here. And
what did you study in college? I don't know if you mentioned.
Theater arts and communication.
Okay.
So I memorized this class, and the next thing I know, I literally went, I asked one of the custodians, you know where the atrium was? though there was this one atrium that was there that was always empty. And I always would walk in there and thought, this would be a great place to teach a class. So I saw one of the custodians one day. I said, I'd love to teach a class in here.
At USC.
At USC. I'd love to teach an exercise class. And he was like, sure. So the next thing I know, I had flyers made. I gave them out to all of the sororities. Jane Fonda-like dance class.
Straight IP
I
violation.
mean, it was just, let me tell, Jane Fonda-like dance class at the atrium, donation only.
Oh, good.
Come ready to move.
Yeah.
So the first day, I have about 10 people, and I have my little box, and you know what? Everybody left like $5. So for a college student for an hour class.
Yeah. What year is this, by the way?
This had to be like 81.
Okay.
So then I said to them, please invite your friends. So the next class, I have about 20 people. And that class built up to about close to 80 people.
Wow.
And I would give the custodian, $25, $30 saying thank you.
And you're teaching dance or workout
No,
or
it was
dance
a
workout?
workout. It was a fitness. It was basically the Jane Fonda workout.
straight up, same thing.
Straight up. I had my little boom box. I had my friend, I'll never forget, Jerry Leeds made me my CD for the music. And that was it.
Were these days with like the neon colors and all that stuff? Or was
No, these were like the leg warmers, though,
okay,
and the
okay.
little belts. And
Which are probably going to make a comeback this year.
for sure.
I feel
Everything's
it.
so 90s,
I feel
right?
it. I
And that
feel
whole.
it. Yeah.
So you know what? And I loved that.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, there was another gym opening around the corner, and he heard about my class, the owner, and he's like, hey, why don't you come and teach over here? And so I did. And before you know it, I was just like teaching at all these places. And the truth of it is, I loved it so much I would have done it for free. I just loved it. It was first of all, I was making a difference in other people's lives. And there's something in that exchange that for me, even as a young person, that touched my heart.
What were the reactions you were getting from these fellow students who were coming to class?
Oh, people, they loved it. People were like, oh my God, this is amazing. I can't believe you're doing this here. People were really, the response was amazing.
And from like I guess like an industry point of view, like how did it look like at the time? Was it hard to get access to classes like that outside of, USC, I guess, or the college area? Or in general?
It was just starting. Like things were just picking up. There, there was Richard Simmons had a studio, and Jane Fonda had her studio, and a lot of the classes were just shifting. Because before that, I think a lot of the gyms, they were more like calisthenics. They weren't exciting and fun and sexy, and and so I think there was like things were just starting to shift a little bit.
Did you view what you were doing as a business, or for you, was it just like this extracurricular activity?
I was a college student
Yeah.
that loved to do this, and the fact that I could make a little bit of extra money, because quite frankly, like I had to come up with all my own spending money in college. My parents were like, we'll send you here, we're going to pay for your dorm, and all the rest, you're going to have to figure that out.
Yeah.
Which I think is one of the best gifts I ever got, because you figure it out.
Yeah.
Like
You grew up into an adult.
you know how to make things happen,
Lavinia, at this point, did you think that, okay, this is fun, whatever, like, but is this going to be my career?
No, I never for a second thought that. And then I got out of school.
Graduated.
And I graduated. I was pursuing my acting and a couple other things. I remember my mom taking me out for graduation dinner. She said, I have good news and bad news. What would you like to hear first, Levin? I was like, give me the good news. The good news, I'm going to pay for your health insurance and your car insurance.
Oh, that's big.
Yeah. And the bad news is that's it.
Not the car.
No, I already had the car. I actually had to work and earn half of that.
Yeah.
So I had already bought the car. But, my dad pitched in the other half. And she said, but if you want to stay out here in LA, sweetheart, you're going to have to pay your own rent and everything else, because we have other kids in college that, and I got it.
What were like rents back then in LA?
I remember sharing an apartment, and I was paying $750. So it was about a $1,500.
Not cheap.
Not
Yeah,
cheap.
no.
You wouldn't go, oh my God, that's like nothing.
Yeah.
And maybe it was a little less because I always like shared a room with someone. I
the way
wasn't
to
the
do it.
person, which was fine. I didn't.
More customers.
I mean, we were so many kids. I mean, that's also another thing that I think was the nurture of my childhood was that it nurtured us to be adaptable. And I think that I call that adaptability my superpower because I don't know how not to be. Because when you're one of 6 kids in such a small, amount of years, and the eldest, you had to kind of be adapt. You had to be able to adapt to everybody.
Yeah.
And
on that point, being like the eldest of 6 kids, was there any pressure like to be like, I don't know, go into some sort of career path or something that was like an example to your younger siblings and, I guess something that would turn out to be like a quote unquote like success?
I never felt that. I mean, I think my mom was really amazing at saying, I have to treat each one of you differently because each one of you have different gifts, have different greatnesses, have different challenges. So she was really careful about not comparing us because in that space that could get, but it was, what could be a little daunting is that other people weren't. Like I remember somebody saying to one of my sisters, a teacher, wow, you're not like Lavinia. Lavinia like gets here on time. She's prepared. And I mean, my mom went right in there and told that teacher off. Don't you ever compare my kids to each other. Like everybody's a little different. Right. And she really, for some reason, really knew how to sort of handle that so that there wasn't this competition between us or an uncomfortableness or me feeling like I have to set the tone for how this family is we never had that.
So after this graduation dinner with your mom and, the good news, bad news, obviously I'm assuming you're just like, oh shit, like I got to do something. Right. What do you do?
So
what's the next step?
The very next thing I did was I went to Bullock's. And I don't know if you remember Bullock's.
This is like pre-Nordstrom, Robinson's May.
Yeah. So I figured, okay, let me just go get a job there.
So that is now the Southwestern Law School campus, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, Bullock's, this was the one.
The one in L.A.
No, the Bullock's I went to was the one on La Cienega.
Okay.
Over the Beverly Center.
Okay.
So I went there and I got a little job. And I think it might have been like my 3rd week there. And a girl who, by the way, is like one of my closest friends to this day, is walking in and she's eating frozen yogurt. And I look at it and I'm like, wow, that looks really good. And she's like, it is, with a really strong like New Jersey or New York accent. And I'm like, where are you from? She's like, I'm from New Jersey. Where are you from? And I said, I'm from Hackensack. And she's like, oh my God, we're like 2. Anyway, so she goes to him, I guess you're an actress. So I'm like, yeah. She's like, yeah. Another pretty girl that just wants to be an actress or whatever. So she goes, why are you working here? And I'm like, well, I needed to get a job. I have to. She's like,
sounds straight like out of a movie.
But I'm telling you, it really was. And I was, what makes it even more interesting is I was at the Judith Lieber handbags. I don't know if you know these and especially when you're like 23 years old, these Judith Lieber handbags are about this big, and they have rhinestones all over them. They look like eggs, and they're like $2,500. So as a college, like somebody that young, you're thinking, who the hell would carry a bag like that and no less pay $2,500? Like, so here I am, like they put me at this counter and here she is. And it was just very funny. She goes, why don't you come to work at Carlos and Charlie's, which was a private nightclub. And I said, well, I don't really know anybody there. She's like, I'll hook you up. So the next thing I know, I gave her phone number. She tells me to come in the next day. Come in, you got a job. And my first thought was like, oh shit, like what do they wear there? I'm just worrying about my like Italian father. Like, I'm thinking a nightclub, I'm going to have to wear like
mini skirt, open top.
So I said, before I go in, I just have to know, what are the uniforms? She's like, black tuxedo pants, white tuxedo shirts, a cummerbund, and a bow tie. I'm like, perfect, I'll be there.
So what were you doing? Like, what was the
So it was cocktail waitressing. Okay. And honestly, I had never drank.
Yeah.
But you know what? You figure it out really quick. Like you have that, you figure it out. And you know what? I made so much money. You would go in at 9:15, at 9:45, and I was literally out of there by like 2:00.
Were you
for
doing both, like bulk store in the day and then
No,
that at night?
I as soon as I started, I was making more in one night cocktail waitressing than I was making an entire
Yeah.
week at Bullock's. So I started doing that, and that's where the fitness thing, where I'd still do a little bit of fitness and that. And then I go on my auditions during the day, and I have a little saying where I say, I might have loved acting, but it didn't really love me. In that I also wasn't the type. In that day, everything was blonde, blue eyes. Like I go to casting directors and they'd be like, we don't know where we'd put you.
Yeah.
You're kind of ethnic. You're not like, you're pretty, but you're ethnic, but you're not ethnic enough that you could be doing like a jail scene. And I mean, it was just like, that's why when I see the shift, it's like, thank you, Jennifer Lopez. Thank you, Salma Hayek. Thank you, people, for bringing
now
some
it's like
ethnicity.
just all ethnic.
Now, right. It's like made such a shift. But in
Yeah.
those days, beauty was Christy Brinkley, and beauty was Cheryl Tiegs, and beauty was these blonde, blue-eyed, beautiful girls. And I was clearly not that look. And then my cousin, who was on Hill Street Blues, lived up the road from me. And a couple times he'd asked me if I would go to his house because his assistant wasn't available, whatever. And could you just go to the house because the Maytag man is coming to do the whatever appliance. And after the second time of doing that, and then him asking me to do it at a friend of his house, I thought, there's a business here. So I started a business called Express Errand Service. Those in LA that need 28 hours in a day was our slogan. And again, I hired a bunch of beautiful actress friends of mine. And before you know it, we had this great business where this was before Uber and stuff like that. So we were picking up parents at LAX and driving them to different places and, waiting for people when their rugs were getting cleaned. And it really turned out to be a fun and lucrative. And it made me realize, like, I'm good at this. Like, I'm good at turning these little nothings in an idea into something. And then it was time. I had just gotten out of a serious relationship. And I thought to myself, okay, if I stay in LA right now, I'm going to end up living here, getting married, and being so far from my family. And I just couldn't envision my life being really separated like that.
And how old are you at this point?
At that point, I was like 25. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going back to New York. So I went back to New York, and I ended up getting in the executive program with Lancôme. And I love that. And even with that, it just sort of, I had an idea for something, and the next thing you know, they're like, yeah, let's try it. And it worked. So I just was very entrepreneurial by nature. It was my nature.
Did you ever have like any issues, like I guess like reporting to somebody or working for somebody, or was that never like a thing?
Oh, yes, I was terrible. Like people would say, she ruffles so many feathers. Like I just remember my old boss at Lancôme. There were two, like one was my direct report, who was this really very sweet woman, Carol West. And then there was Dick Roderick, who was the president or the vice president of sales. And Carol would be like, Dick, like she goes into a store and she just ruffles feathers like crazy. And he was like, I know, but she's really good at what she does. And my heart was in it. Like it just bothered me when I would get in one of these stores and they weren't prepared for us. It was like, how do you expect us to increase your business 30% for this week if we don't have anything to the stuff that we sell? So then I would pick up the phone and I would call corporate and I would say, I just throw them all under the bus.
And for those, I guess for those listening who don't know what Lancôme is, could you explain like what kind of business they're in?
Lancôme is a cosmetic. They're one of the big threes.
They're still up there.
Oh yeah, it's like Lancôme, Estee Lauder, and Clinique are usually the big threes in the huge stores. So and I love that. I loved what I was doing, and then that's kind of where I learned. Okay, maybe I just need to learn how to work with people a little bit better, have a little bit more tolerance.
More tactical, maybe?
Yeah, a little more tactical. So then I would say, okay, so 2 weeks before we would go into their store, I would stop in and say, we're going to be here in 2 weeks. I just want to make sure these are the products that we really like. Where, some of the other people would have just go in there and really wouldn't care. Like some of the people on our team, I don't think they really cared if they hit 30%. I cared. Like that was just who I was. I competed against myself. If we're going to walk into this store and I want to blow the numbers out. I don't want to just do 30%. I want to do 80% increases.
Why do you think that is? I mean, I know you were built that way, but like, what about that gave you so much satisfaction?
I don't know if you can really put your finger on like what that burning fire is inside of you. Afterwards, because then I had this huge epiphany after we sold, and I realized that it was also on some level something missing inside of me that I always had to prove my worth.
What do you think that was, though?
What was the
missing piece?
Well, I think it was a lot of things. I think it's a lot of your conditioning. I think it's a lot of your family of origin. I mean, I don't want to get too spiritual, but I do also think that sometimes it's past lineages that just bring that lack of real spirit confidence, like that spiritual confidence that you have that you don't have to prove. Like I don't have to, I now work with so many people that I mentor, and I can't tell you how many young women, it's as if like if they do not get into their first choice law school, they just will not be able to face their parents. Yeah. And that's where so much of the drive was. I never really felt like I had that, but I did have a lot of drive to be successful. I just had that drive. And so when I would work with other people that didn't have that level of drive,
it just didn't make sense.
Yeah, it really bothered me. I wasn't tolerant of that.
It sounds like obviously there's a lot of situations where people get that pressure, I guess, or like that bug from external powers. But in your case, it was more internal. Like it was a competition with yourself. And is that something that you think could be, I guess, learned and trained and built, or is it something that again, it's just something you're born with?
No, I think that you can have mastery in that. I think when you have clarity, when you set your goals, when you really understand also the genesis of why you want to do something. Again, because so much today is for outside approval. That's not healthy. There's nothing healthy about constantly needing to walk in a room and people go, wow, you're gorgeous.
That external validation.
Yeah, that it just doesn't, it's not healthy. But I do think that, as long as you can connect someone to something that is really meaningful to them, like that's always, as a mentor, and I mentor so many young women now, it's really helping them get down to that deep something.
Lavinia, you talk about how you did all these different things after when you graduated college. Where did the working out part of things, did that just kind of drop out? Was that in the back burner? I mean, what was happening?
For me, working out, it has always remained. It's
a lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle. It's the same way it's a hygiene. Like I have physical hygiene, I have mental hygiene, I have spiritual hygiene. I look at it in that way. I don't put it on the pedestal. It's just something I'm going to do.
But were you doing the classes still?
No, but I was taking. So once I started working for Lancome, I could afford to join a really nice gym, and I joined the Vertical Club and started going there, and then we were at a couple other Jeff Martin studio, and then and I think at that point with us was we really still felt, my brothers and I, like there was something really missing in New York City, because there wasn't a great place where people could just really go and have it all, So that really became sort of a discussion we started having. I'd like to think we weren't complaining about it, but I think at one point it was a little bit of a complaint. Like, dang, why doesn't somebody open up a great club? Like we all would love to go and work out. We weren't the people that went to happy hour. You have to realize at that time, happy hour was people left work and everybody went to happy hour. Right. Happy hour all over New York City was huge. And that wasn't who we were. That wasn't our elk. We didn't have that. We weren't those kind of young people. So for us, it was like we wanted to go to a gym. Like that was social. That to us was like, but none of the gyms had all the elements. Like you said, why can't somebody open a gym that's like has great lighting and is sexy and is hot and has good-looking people, but has great weights and also has great classes and has all the things that we wanted. So after, complaining a little bit, I think we finally all looked at each other and it's like, why don't we do it?
And what were your brothers doing at the time?
In construction. They started a construction business.
Did you have any idea what it took or what it would take at that point to be the one opening that gym or to open that club for that matter? Or like what went into it and the equipment and running that business? I mean, did you have any idea or was this just like...
where the beauty was for us was there were three of us. Mm-hmm. We each had a different lane. Mm-hmm. And we were good at that lane. When our talents aligned with the business needed.
Necessities, yeah.
And so my one brother, Danny, was all about the real estate. He just, and to this day, I would call him like a real estate guru. Amazing at that. So even young, he had a pulse for really good real estate, and he was really good at raising money. And my other brother was really, even young, he was a craftsman. He could make the most beautiful furniture at a very young age. In high school, he would spend so much of his time really making gorgeous furniture. He's very passionate about that. So him creating the design and working with the architects and the building and really, and then for me, it was the fitness component of it. I think it was fitness, and then because I'd been with Lancome a couple of years now, I really understood how to create teams. Like I understood the sales end of it and
what goes into building like
and I worked there, so I was privy to a lot what that went on in branding and marketing. I don't think they called it branding then, but it was more like marketing and advertising. So it just all of our skill sets worked out. It was like the perfect storm to have something really magical happen.
What was that initial vision like? Was it sort of, let's just have one location, and let's make this the most badass gym you could find, and that was kind of the extent of it, or did you think further out?
No, we didn't think further out. We opened up one on the Upper West Side because that's where we lived and that's where we were complaining somebody needs, and we opened that up, and it was profitable before we even opened. Because everybody was in the same boat on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. There was just really there was a very well, first of all, there was a horrible jack-o'-lantern that you wouldn't even want to go into. Then there was a really great studio, but you wanted more than classes. So if you were going to do other things, and then there was like just a kind of a dirty gym down in the basement somewhere. And that was really all there was on the Upper West Side. So but the thing that was so startling to us was that people were coming from all over Manhattan. I remember J.F. Kennedy coming up on his rollerblades, rollerblading up from downtown. And all of a sudden, people were just coming from all over to work out at Equinox.
How did they find out about it?
We were written up pretty quickly in New York Magazine. So we had a pretty good write-up in New York Magazine, and the word just traveled. First of all, I think we opened up a club that people wanted, that young, hip, I guess today they'd call them the millennials, right? That they wanted it. All the elements. It was hot. It was sexy. It was thought out well. It inspired people. It was like, wow, I would not go to happy hour for here.
Yeah. Right.
It was.
You were competing with happy hour. You weren't competing with other gyms.
We weren't competing with other gyms. We were really competing with happy hour.
Yeah.
So, and all of a sudden, it was every detail was thought out, from the lighting to the music to where the aerobics room was, so that the aerobics, the energy in that room fed all the energy in the weight training room, and the locker rooms. And, another thing, it was impeccably clean. For years, we would have surveys. We would get surveys back from our clients, and I can't tell you, like, we would be thinking, like, we're so innovative in all of our fitness. We're so innovative. We have wellness centers. We have spas. We have this. We have that. And they would write, I love this gym. It's so clean. It's cleaner than my own shower. And I'm thinking, like, dang, all the shit that we're doing, and this is what we're getting noticed for, the cleanliness.
And that was just something that you guys believed like had to be done, right? Just like keeping it
I
clean.
mean, you have to have a gym that's really clean because otherwise it's funky and people are going to get diseases and skin crap. And, we need to make sure that everything's clean. Like it wasn't.
How long did it take for that initial location? How long did it take to get it up and running? I mean, there's a lot that goes into that, especially in a city
we
like
had
New
already
York.
had opened one other gym up in Westchester County.
This is before Equinox? Or?
Yeah, it was our first gym. So we kind of got our feet wet there. And at the time, we were all keeping our day jobs. So I was actually keeping at that point, I had left Lancome. I had gotten offered amazing with a fragrance company who was actually owned by Herb Albert. So I was working with them. I was the head of the whole East Coast. And my brothers were doing construction. So with this first club, it was like, okay, we're just going to keep doing what we do during the day and we'll figure this out. It just sort of landed. We thought, all right, let's try it. It's not a huge investment.
And
even though, to be honest, like if I remember correctly, our investors were practically like loan sharks. Like nobody was giving you money in those days. So the guy that giving us money, it was like 30% on the dollar.
And how much, like at this point, you guys are, you're in your like late 20s, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
How much money did you need to start this first gym off?
I mean, I think we got into the first gym for a couple $100,000 because it was already an existing gym that we just had to renovate. And we leased out all the equipment. So you lease the equipment,
How difficult, I know you said that you guys were profitable before even opening up. After that initial kind of, surge in customers and people, what was the team like? You and your brothers, what were you guys talking about at that point? You get all these reactions from people, the cleanliness, people love it. Are you guys at all surprised as to what you have created at that moment?
I don't think we were surprised. I don't remember us being surprised. I mean, I do remember us being just really, we would walk in that gym in the morning running. We were so excited. We just loved what we did. We loved it. There wasn't a thing from the people to the energy to the programming. Like we just loved it. And because of that, we worked really, really hard.
And were you involved at that level, like with the programming and like the fitness classes?
I was doing everything. I wasn't teaching. At that point, I sort of was like, you know what? We're in New York City. There's some of the best instructors in the world. People are coming in from all over. Like it wasn't about me being a teacher. So we were, I mean, I remember sitting there having the auditioning all these people and, everything, the front desk staff and hiring your first front desk staff and training them. And, my brother used to say, we're not a halfway house, Lavinia. But because the sad of their story, I hired them. It was like where my heart was, you know what I mean?
This is early 90s, right? When
this was like 89.
89, and that was officially Equinox, or this is the first gym?
The official Equinox, I believe, was 89. Okay. September 23rd, we opened up on the fall.
It was recently the Equinox. 30th anniversary, right? Yeah. When does the conversations continue about? Actually, before that, what point do you leave your day job to do this?
No, as soon as we opened up Equinox, as soon as we started talking about doing this gym in the city, that's when it was like, all right, now it's time to let.
So you all left.
Then it was.
You had seen some initial traction with that other gym, and you were like, we need to open up in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And where did the name come from?
Excuse me?
Where did the name come from?
The name, well, we kind of had this group of friends that we would all get together with, and who was working in different areas of marketing and advertising and so forth. And we would invite everybody up to my brother's apartment, and we would give everybody got free Chinese food, and we would just sit around talk about names. So we were coming up with all these names. Then my brother Vito and his girlfriend, but wife today, went up to the Equinox in Manchester, Connecticut, or Lenox, Connecticut. There was an Equinox there. And they came back.
Equinox what?
It was an Equinox hotel.
Okay.
And they came back and they were like, oh, we went to this place, Equinox. And I think at that point I was like, Equinox, like, that's a great name. And then we started playing around with that and what that meant and the Equinox. And of course, I loved the whole idea about the whole connection to the earth and what it meant. And I mean, it was very spiritual.
Right, for sure.
Day and name. And that's kind of, that happened. And then, we were very lucky. Like, even with the guy that came by to helped us with our branding, this guy, Gordon Pennington. And I would come in from Westchester, and my brothers and I would go and get lunch together. And then we would sit on the stoop. And this is where our first offices were. And I'm telling you, I'm sure that was not legit. You shouldn't have even been in there. It was just like in the bottom of a building that even when you walk down the stairs, you felt like, okay, is this stable?
Yeah.
And so we would have lunch. And after a few days, Gordon would come by, and then finally he came by and he's like, who are you guys? I'm like, what are you in? I don't know. I see you guys on the stoop, and you look so cool, and you look great, and it feels like something's going on here. And we started talking, and he was like, I said, yeah, we're creating this gym, and tell me about it. And we're telling him a little bit about it. We hadn't finalized the name yet, but we were. And he's like, I was just brought in by Tommy Hilfiger to rebrand him. I want to work with you guys. I was like, we have no money. Like, we have
immediately.
No, that was always my just so you know.
You want to help us? Yeah, we have $0.
I just always said that to everyone though. Like, I just want you to know we have no money. Like, no, zero. Like, we are broke. Anyways, like, he goes, you know what? We'll figure it out. We'll barter. And that was like my first realization of barter, because after that we bartered everything. I mean, there wasn't a thing. I'm not even sure if that's legal, but there wasn't a thing that we didn't barter.
No, it's legal. For sure legal. No. We'll give you 2 years membership. You're going to do our entire marketing.
Right. And so, but how magical is that? Like, the guy that they bring in from LA, and he sees us, and I'll do your marketing, branding. And then it was just, and that was really how, when the stars are just so aligned. And I think the stars were aligned, but I think our frequency was also high. Mm-hmm. Like, we were attracting. We were in our, we were in our lane. We were in where we were supposed to be. Like it was just divine order for us to be doing what we were doing.
I know Pat asked earlier about the plans about was it just this one thing, or was it this bigger vision? At what point were you starting to have discussions with your brothers about, we have to do this in other places? Like, this is clearly very successful. Right. How do we replicate it?
Well, I think so much really happened. Like, you're in it, you're doing it, you're showing up, you're learning what you need to learn, and it's like the next door just kind of opens. Like, at that point, Danny's like, we need to open up downtown. Full disclosure, anything beyond 57th Street in those days was not my jam.
Yeah.
Like, I was an Upper West Side girl. Like, the thought of being down that way, I was just like, and then when he said 19th Street, I was like, 19th Street? Like, who goes beyond 23rd Street? I mean, I didn't know that existed. I was just like, really? And he's like, no, you don't understand. Like, that's why my brother had like such a pulse on real estate. Yeah. And he's like, no, Livin, I'm telling you. And
what about it was it though? Was it like a combination of, it's affordable, but also like there's going to be foot traffic?
No, my brother just knew that area was going to blow up.
Yeah.
Like, he knew that Flatiron.
What was it called? Oh, Flatiron.
It was Flatiron. Yeah. But he knew, because really there was nothing there. I'm telling you, when we went down there was ABC carpets, and that is it.
Yeah.
It was not a hip place.
Right.
Like Fifth Avenue was nothing. Like the stores that were on there, or like, I think the only decent one was Bath Body. What is that?
Bath and Body Works?
Bath and Body
Bed,
something.
Bath and Beyond?
No, not Bath and Beyond, but it was like it was this, they had one not far from us either. It was just like they sell soaps and creams and whatever. But that was like the only decent store down on Fifth Avenue. Everything else was just
and
really
at this
horrible.
point, as you're expanding, you're just like basically taking the money that you're making and investing it back
Pretty
into the
much.
business?
I mean, when
no,
we sold
no
our
other
company,
investors?
we owned 100% of the company.
Got it. So
And we owned a lot of the real estate as
So
well.
you got the loans initially, you paid them off, and then
Yeah.
you're just like self-funding.
Exactly. And yeah.
So you open at the Flatiron District.
So we opened in the Flatiron District. This is a really fun story. So we rented it with an option to buy. And so, and it was it was a landmark building. It was the original Lord and Taylor. I mean, the building was just like, I walked in there, I was like, oh my God, everything about it was just so beautiful, and the finishes. And so we get that building, and then I don't remember if we had 3 years to buy it or whatever. So now we're going to buy it. And my father comes to every one of us, you cannot personally sign on that building. And I'm like, okay, Dad. And he's like, no, Lavinia, I want you to really listen to me. You cannot. Your brother Danny is going to tell you that you're going to, personally guarantee. I don't want you to personally guarantee that building. You could lose everything. But, I was like 33 years old or 32 years old. Like, you're not thinking like that. I don't know. I don't know if I was just young and stupid or just, I had faith.
You just didn't know any better.
I didn't know any better. And it was like when my brother came and he said, here, you signed. And again, it was like, and then that building turned out to be, years later. I mean, that building is
the golden one.
Was
really
it showing that much promise at this point where you had no, I guess, did you have any worries like that this wouldn't work out?
No.
You knew, like, it was just happening.
It happened. And what else was happening, like, even internally, like, people don't really know all the things. Like, I mean, we had that business for almost 14 years, but because from the time you start creating it and the vision and then you get it out, but we had built like 7 or 8 brands inside of it. Because what happened was, all of a sudden, personal training when we started was only for the only people that personal trained were professional athletes and celebrities. And that was it. The average person, even the CEO of companies didn't personal train in that day. That was not normal. And our thought was, because when we would go skiing, and we were all skiers, we would take lessons. And that's how we got really good. And I remember us having this conversation, and then I remember taking an instructor, even when I didn't have a lot of money, but I would take the instructor out for the day because that was money well spent to me. I wasn't necessarily the girl that needed to have the fabulous handbag and all that. But when I go skiing, I want to have my instructor.
Right.
So we were just sort of bouncing that around. Like, if we created something that was affordable, personal training that was affordable, we really believed people would personal train. And then we created this whole personal training program that was affordable, and it was tiers. And like that, it took off. So now all of a sudden, we need trainers. There weren't trainers. I mean, trust me, in the beginning, it was just like, so we had to create a whole Equinox Fitness Training Institute, which was a certification to be able to have really good people on the floor.
It was like before NASM or whatever those programs were called?
They were just kind of starting, but nobody was really doing it, honestly. It was just very...
wasn't very commonplace.
No. And also, in those days, being a trainer was like, you went home and you told your mom you're going to be a trainer. She's like, loser. Like, it was not
how
a
much
prestigious...
money can you possibly make?
No, it was like any lost kid
Right.
became a trainer. And I really believe we were the ones that totally changed that story about a trainer.
For sure.
And it also became like, we legitimized that you can really make money, you can be successful. I mean, when you really think about it, and this is what we thought about, is like, to us, trainers were preventing you from going to a doctor. I mean, when you think about it, their job is to keep you healthy.
Preventative care.
It's really preventative. And that was what we instilled. And that was the message. And that was the programming that went into our Equinox Fitness Training Institute. We didn't just have other trainers up there. I mean, we brought people in from all over the world to train these trainers. I mean, we really set the bar so high. And even in those days, for somebody to go from level 1 to level 3, years ago, that took like 3 years to get to be a level 3 trainer. You know, because when we're going to say and we're going to endorse you as a level 3 trainer, we know not only is your training impeccable, but the way you care for people, your attention to detail, the way you're in it with them, you're focusing with them. You're not like looking around. Like it really was special.
And you mentioned affordability, and obviously a lot of folks, as Equinox grew, you know, saw, and it's become a, you know, more so like a premium gym and an upscale gym that probably not everyone can afford. But was that the goal from day one? Was we're gonna kind of come into the market here at, you know, kind of a higher price, but more to give and more to provide holistically?
Yeah, I mean, we knew that we wanted, it wasn't about price.
Yeah.
It was about giving a great product. You know, we never really thought about the price until all of a sudden we had to go back and say, okay, to give all of this, this is how much it's costing us. So we're going to have to adjust the pricing for that. You know, we never went after it. It was never, honestly, it was never about money for us. It was really about changing people's lives. You know, we were really very committed on that. You know, we even created this wellness center, which the negative mail I got from people, I can't believe you're involved in this quackery. You know, but that was like 1995 when we opened that. And it was chiropractic, acupuncture, homeopathy, naturopath. We even did colonics. We had, you know, all different types of modalities in there. Craniosacral.
But it was, and the reason I mentioned that is because it wasn't something that people were used to, and you like you mentioned, there were like the really expensive like trainers that not everyone can afford, and then there was like the kind of just the lower level gyms where, you know, it was very just cheap, like didn't really provide a lot for you. Was it difficult to get people to see that value initially before they even had a chance to check, like try the experience?
Not really, because it's a happening. Like we were all on the floor training with trainers. And then our friends were all on the floor training with trainers. Like, you know, when you walk into a place and it's like, man, this thing is happening.
Yeah, it's live.
You see all these people training and moving and going and breathing and doing. It's like, I want that.
Like, and so would those people tell other people? Was it just like a word of mouth thing?
It was all word of mouth. It was all word of mouth. You know, because it was really exciting. You know, this was something new. We were trailblazing a whole new thing that people had never experienced before. So all of a sudden, and even the classes to come in and, you know, have a class, and you walked in and the lighting was just perfect and the sound was perfect, and you were on these Neo-Shock floors that were bouncing so you weren't getting shin splints. And, you know, it was just, it wasn't, it was, and the vibe and the energy, and like it was just, it was special. It was really a whole new everything for the industry.
I mean, there's no doubt that you had so much fun doing this, and I know you mentioned you did this you guys did this for 14 years.
Yeah.
And just because we're curious about, you know, life after Equinox as well, tell us a little bit about the acquisition or like exiting, you know, from Equinox.
Well, prior to even us selling, I remember there was some talk at one point, and it was just too premature. And then there was even like, I remember us going out with a couple of different people to look at different gyms because they wanted to do an acquisition. And I remember my brother Danny and I went, and I just looked, I'm like, do you really think we could work for these people?
Yeah.
Like, it's just not going to work, you know? So then we kind of put that to the side and just
like
kept...
You thought you would still stay with the company after...
Well, we knew, in the beginning, like when we were maybe 5 years in, 6 years in, people were starting to come to talk to us about buying us, and then we would stay on and be able... I remember at one point my brother was like, you know, we could get like $10 million off the table, and each one of us would get $3 million, and that's a lot of money, Lavinia. And I'm thinking... But again, like I was never motivated about money. I don't know why. I mean, I don't feel like I was ignorant about it, but I never worried about money. Like it wasn't something I worried about. I didn't have this scarcity or fear around money. I have it around other things. I don't have it around money. Yeah. So it was just like, no, that's ridiculous. And then all of a sudden, when it started getting real, like all of a sudden, and also we got to a point where I think, I don't remember if there were like 10, 11 gyms, clubs, plus we had, I had the Medi spas and I had the regular spas and I had the wellness centers.
This is all in New York still?
Yeah, it was all in New York. We were just getting ready to sign leases out here.
Okay.
My brother had already been negotiating, like the ones in Pasadena. Well, that one we had done that, and then doing the one
West
in Beverly
Hollywood and
Hills, and so we were part of that negotiation, like starting to branch out. Anyway, but yeah, there came a point where it was just like you could feel that it had changed. When it starts getting so big like that, it's no longer about really inspiring the people that you're working with. Before you know it, these meetings turned into like P&L meetings. That's just not, I'm not going to sit around. Like that doesn't inspire me. I like creating new programming. I like creating all that. And before you know it, the scale started to change a little bit.
And did your brothers feel the same way
Yeah,
too?
I think we all felt the same way. And also it was, I just remember thinking like, this is not sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't do all of these marketing, PR, new programming, the fitness, the sales. I mean, it was just like, and we had junior people under us, and I mean very junior. But I remember thinking like, if we don't sell this company, I am hiring,
a CEO.
Well, not just that. I was hiring in each area. Like we have to have a VP of this and a VP of marketing, because we were just spread so thin.
And did you have a big aggressive like expansion plan at that point? Like, was it like you had all these cities planned out already, or were you just kind of taking it one club at a time?
Well, we knew LA was going to be. We knew LA
next
was
market.
The next market for sure.
And I think that although a lot of the founders that we sit down with, a lot of them get to that point. I think it's worthy to note that it's probably a great thing when your business gets to that point on a business level.
It's amazing.
Right? Like a lot of businesses don't get to that point where the fun is almost taken out of it as a founder.
Right.
But again, I think self-awareness of that as a founding team is very important to realize, look, just because we were able to build this business and start it doesn't mean we're the right people to take it to the next level, because that's just not what we want to do.
Right.
You can learn it, but the cost of learning it might be too great to actually create a great company.
No, my heart clearly was not aligned with that.
Yeah.
Like I just didn't have that. No.
So at what point were you guys ready?
So then at one point, I think it all sort of came together. I don't remember exactly what the genesis of it was, but it was sort of like somebody came to us and was like, I think it's really time. People were talking about, we got to the point where we were doing these different things for marketing, and they bring
focus groups.
Yeah, focus groups. And it was like, I think they're owned by Nike. So, there was already a perception out there that we were so much bigger than just like a family-run business, because the branding was really amazing. Everything was really so on point. But then, I think it just sort of started happening, and the next thing you know, Bear Stearns, people that were working with us, and I'm sure going through that it's between the forensic accountants and the this and the that, and everybody going through all of this, and
the acquisition process.
It can be daunting. And I remember my brother Danny coming into me. This was probably about 3 weeks before we closed. I just want you to know there's something on the table right now, Lavinia, that this deal could go south. Like, I just want you to know that. And I just looked at him and I said, I want you to know this deal's already done. So I want you to just feel so confident that this deal's done. Whatever they're going to put on the table, we're going to be able to work through that.
Were you you guys going out and seeking buyers, or did someone approach you at this time?
No, the people that approached us, we sat down and we went through that exercise, but it wasn't. You know what? I think when that happens, it puts a spark in you that, maybe we should do our due diligence and go out there and see out there when you have what you're really worth. Because when somebody comes to you, they're kind of creating it in their perspective.
Of course.
So, and that kind of got my brother Danny, especially since he was more the finance slash real estate. Like, I think we should really take this out to the market and see what Equinox is really worth.
This whole time I've been trying to think to myself, and the question I really want to ask is, even though it was three of you, was the fact that you were the big sister, like their older sister, did that play a role? I mean,
No.
did they listen more to you as a
Well, first
result
of all, I
of
have
that?
a twin brother, so we were both the same age. So
Yeah,
that
They
wasn't.
couldn't play that card.
No, not at all. I mean, I think the thing that was so amazing about the three of us together is whatever our lane was, nobody, like there were some things Danny and I would cross over in, like in fitness. He would cross over, like he was creating the Equinox Fitness Training Institute. Like he took that on. So we'd cross over a little bit. And also he has a different approach. Like Danny's approach would be like, he wants to sit down and talk about 100 ways this thing could not work. And that wasn't my style. Like my style was, I don't want to sit here and beat this dead, showing how it's not going to work. Like, let's just pilot it and try it. If this person is really excited about it, let them do it. Like, so we had different styles, but in truth, it was great because he grounded me. I got so excited in everyone's enthusiasm for a new program or a new product or a new something, but that costs money to do that. So he was the one that kind of helped. Like, I think who we were together was always amazing. So each one of us, like I said, had our expertise, and I think it's where the magic was. I always say that I don't think either we could have done it without each other.
Right.
It was real, and even to build the culture. Because one of the things about Equinox, it was such a strong culture because we were family first. So when we would walk into a meeting and I'd say, "Hey, Dan, what'd you do last night?" And then the other people would walk in, and before you know it, everybody would become related. We were like a family. Like I remember when there was a gym that was trying to steal some of our people when they were open up, and I ran into the guy years later at one of the conventions. He said to me, "I could never figure out what you were giving your people." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Because I offered some of your people double of what you were paying them, and they wouldn't leave." And he goes, "What did you do?" I said, "I cared about them. I listened to them." I mean, I can't tell you how many, some of my maintenance people, this one woman in particular, she really wanted her daughter to go to college. And I had them come to my house and I helped them fill out the applications and I helped her write her essay for college. And I mean, that's what Equinox was like.
Right.
That's how we cared about people.
You mentioned the word related.
I know. I was literally about to say the same thing.
So obviously we know the Related Companies
Right.
was the company that acquired Equinox.
Oh,
I guess when that happened, explain to us like what you and your brothers, I guess you specifically felt going through that.
Well, I can't really speak for them because I think they had a little bit of a different reaction. But for me, and like I said, that was a real tedious year of
2006?
well, we actually sold, the first time we sold 2001.
Okay.
But, and then we held on to a big part and then we sold again to Related.
Got it.
But, and we were going through this process. And again, like we were just three people from New Jersey that grew up in a very middle class, humble situation. And all of a sudden, like this amount of money, we're just thinking like, I thought every day was going to feel like 4th of July. You know that feeling when you see like fireworks for the first time and that elation you're feeling, your heart's feeling like that, or the first time you're on a roller coaster and you're like,
Yeah, that rush.
that rush. I really thought once I would never have to worry about money again. My son would never have to worry about money. I just thought every day was just going to feel this feeling of joy and a bliss. And
You're just going to wake up and you're going to be elated
and just be like,
all
yeah,
day. Yeah.
love my life, love my life. I just thought every day was going to be like that.
Yeah.
And then we closed, and it was like around December 17th. And we all go to Cipriani's with our big group of 50 or 60 friends. And,
Your treat.
today I call them, today I'm realizing that these were like agenda friends. You know how like the friends that you're networking with, they were all pretty much I help you, you help me. Well, that's this table. And it is what it is, right? And everybody's walking up to me and they're like, oh my God, Lavinia, can you believe it? Can you believe it? And I'm thinking like, it just hasn't hit me yet. It just hasn't hit me yet. And the next day comes and we go to Equinox, and now it's like, because a lot of the people didn't know. And now we have to go in there and clean out our desks and say goodbye. And that takes we do that right up until Christmas. And then I remember Christmas was, the gifts were very generous that year. And we all go on vacation because I had a house in Playa del Carmen. And I think my one brother came down with me with his family, and my other brother went somewhere else. And, we have 3 sisters that we were close with too. And also they owned the stores. So they were partners with us in just the Equinox. They were called Energy Wear stores. So we come back January 3rd. My son goes to school January 4th. I take him to school. And I remember leaving school and thinking, like, what am I going to do with myself? Like, it was the first moment. I hadn't put one thought into that moment of right then and there on what I was going to do.
The way the deal was designed, you weren't going to stay on.
No.
They were going to buy
you.
you.
By the way, we wanted it that way.
Oh, okay.
Anybody that was talking to us about staying on, we were like, we're going to close that chapter. We're going to get all our money off the table. And we're going to do it that way.
Did you? There was this. I'm assuming like you had this obviously connection with Equinox that was like it's your baby. Like you created
birthed it. It was my birthday.
Was it hard letting that go?
Well,
why didn't you want to continue to be part of it?
Because I think on some level you just think it's freedom.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, then I can go create what I could go just like I don't know, like isn't that the dream? Like if somebody says to you, oh my God, you're going to be able to retire at 41 years old and never have to worry about money
100%.
again. I mean,
there's more to life basically than.
Yeah. And that's what I thought. But I got into actually the darkest stage in my life because I kept waiting for that feeling, even if it was just the feeling of not just the money, but the satisfaction that we created this. Like, oh my God, like we did this and I'm not feeling anything, I'm working out at Equinox a little bit and trying not to. And then all of a sudden, like I kept waiting for that feeling. And I remember thinking, and you can't tell anybody, like, who are you going to tell? Your friends? Like, oh, sorry, honey, why don't you go to Chanel and buy yourself a bunch of clothes? Go on a little shopping spree.
Yeah, they're not going to feel bad for you.
Nobody's feeling bad for you. Yeah. I didn't want to feel bad for myself. Like, there was never anything ever about me that was depressed, or I was like always that girl. Like, I could rally. I don't care. If 3 o'clock in the morning, somebody comes and wakes me up, I'm like, yeah, let's go. Like, and all of a sudden now I'm heavy, and I realized I've never been so lost. I've never been so depressed. I didn't know who I was. And then that started my spiritual journey of like, okay, and I had already been doing some spiritual work prior to that, so I didn't expect this. I kind of thought I worked through this stuff, but I realized that, and that's why I love doing what I do now, is because you have to, even when you're doing the Equinox or whatever somebody's brand is, you got to take time to connect to yourself. Like I realized I wasn't sitting around with the girls anymore who I could take my mask off with and just hang out. All my friends were kind of like, she's Lavinia from Equinox. She owns Equinox, and you're the health and beauty editors, or you're this and you're that. Like we were all tragically hip together. Like, that's not where life is. Life is when you could sit with those people and be like the vulnerable Lavinia, the scared Lavinia, like where I'm sharing that my relationship isn't going so great and I'm scared because I don't feel like I'm a good enough mom, and like that authentic sharing. And I realized like I didn't have that in my life. Like I hadn't taken the time along the way when I was building this brand to get in touch with that part of me. Like, who am I really? Like the I am in my soul.
When you're so busy, it's like it's not something you're probably thinking about, right? Like you're just kind of going with the flow, and you're so focused on building this business out that's doing so well and it's so promising.
And it's also so aligned with me.
Yeah,
like it was so aligned with me, and it was. But
it was your life.
Yeah, it was totally my life.
But touching on what Pat said, like I'm curious, what are your thoughts now that you've done this and you've gone through that? How should someone in that position of grinding it out, working all the time, constantly, is in this kind of like artificial world that we kind of live in, especially with social media? How does one take time to kind of take a step back, whether it's be alone or be around people, to really think about their true identity? Because it seemed like what you were going through was this identity crisis. Like you really did not know
Right.
where you were, right?
Well, because my identity was everything outside of me.
Right.
It was like it wasn't me, and that's what I see happening today in the world. Like, it's people think that their identity is the school, the college they graduated from, or the area code, or how much money they have in the bank, or where the founder, or what boards they're on, or that's not your identity. Like, it's to take time to connect to that. And, last week I was speaking at the Congressional Club in DC, and the topic was wellness in 2020. And, I talked a lot about that. I really believe we're on a tipping point to a whole new vision of wellness. And I said, but before I can talk to you about the tipping point, I have to sort of remind you on where we've been in the wellness world and what everything has come to us saying this is wellness. And, I go right into the whole thing about water. I remember the first time I saw somebody walking down the street in New York City carrying a bottle of Evian water and that big bottle. And then she opened it up and stopped gulping. I'm like, wow, that's weird. Because in those days we were drinking little Dixie cups. Nobody was talking about water. So then all of a sudden information came, hydrate. You need to drink at least half of your weight in ounces of water. But then it wasn't just water, it was what kind of water. And, over the years, we went from drinking spring water to drinking infused, to drinking alkaline, to drinking structured. And now Tom Brady's telling us we need to drink deuterium depleted water.
Whatever Tom Brady says, I do.
Okay, good. So now you're going to drink deuterium depleted water. Yeah. So there's everything about water. And now it's like, everybody in any office you go in, everybody's got their big liter of stainless steel water. And then it was like sleep, telling us about sleep, and you need to have 8 hours sleep, but this amount of REM sleep, and this amount of theta sleep, and this is the kind of bed you need to sleep on, and underneath your bed you need to put a grounding blanket, and over you need this, and these are the vitamins you need to take to have a good night's sleep, and then you're gonna wear this, this thing that's going to tell you exactly what kind of sleep you had, and that's wellness. And then they go into the food and how we've ricocheted all over the place with food. Yeah. And yes, we started with low fat, and then they tell us high fat, and then they tell us vegan, and then vegetarian, and then caveman, and paleo. And 1 minute coffee's bad for you, butter's bad for you, but now we mix them together and we have something healthy.
Bulletproof coffee.
So it's all gets so confusing. And then there's where we were with exercise. So, when we started Equinox, it was basically was that you had to have an equal amount of cardio, resistance training, and flexibility training. Then it morphed into, no, we need high intensity training. You need to have your fast twitch muscle fibers, your slow twitch muscle fibers, and then it's like cycling. Okay, there's indoor cycling, and then there's spinning, and now there's a party on a bike, and people are screaming and twirling their heads back and forth, and that's,
which is now an Equinox company, SoulCycle.
Yeah. And then it's like yoga. Okay, but there's Ashtanga, and there's Hatha, and there's hot yoga, where you're doing yoga in 150, 105-degree room, and and then it's like Pilates.
It's like this inundation of there's just so much.
And people are still not fit.
Right.
And people are still not healthy, because what we've realized is that, and I was the poster child, trust me, at 30 years old, I was the poster child of fitness. I was working out like a maniac. I was in amazing shape. My resting heart rate was 55. My combined cholesterol was 140 with
Not to
my
mention you're running a gym.
HDL being over, and then I jumped out of bed and fell flat on my face and ended up in Lenox Hill Hospital. And it's like, wait a minute. If I'm not healthy, what is health? Right. And that was really that started my exploration of what is health. And that was when I really realized. And, the thing is like, this was freaking 30 years ago when I got out there saying health is, you have to be spiritually healthy, mentally healthy, emotionally healthy, and physically healthy. And that hasn't really completely held on. Like, people are still not embracing that. They're still thinking the magic pill, the food, the this, wearing these monitors that everybody's wearing, and they're putting so much attention and they're causing so much stress to get their 10,000 steps in, but they're missing other huge things. Right. So, and it was interesting because a couple of weeks ago I was with a young man who's he's the director of the health care or the health lab, the innovation lab at Stanford. And when I was listening to him talk about what they're working on, it was exactly my speech, because they're working on how the mind, how important the mind is in healing up there. So it's like but nobody's talking about that because nobody's really figured out how to make money at it yet. Because it's all somehow based on money. But that's really where it is.
That's the tough thing about business, is that if it doesn't make money, then how do you have a business? But there's so many issues, whether it's personal issues, societal issues, environmental issues, that, unfortunately, like if there isn't a clear business model, a lot of money isn't being put into it for research and development and creating businesses. But I mean, as humanity, we got to figure something out.
Right. And
otherwise,
that's why, like with me, like, pivoting into like my Inside Out movement, it's really that. It's letting people realize you can keep doing all those things that you're doing, and you can keep going there and doing this and buying that pill and doing this. And that's not real real deep wellness, everlasting wellness lives. It doesn't live there. It actually lives right between your head and the connection between your heart and being able to connect to yourself through the course of the day. Being able to connect it doesn't have to be a long thing. It's about awakened. It's about consciousness, so before you do something, to get in touch with, okay, why am I going to have this milkshake? If you decide to have it after you're connected to why, I'm aware that this is filling an emotional hole right now, but to be able to understand why you're doing it, and you do it consciously, and I'm still going to do it. It's a different connection.
Without feeling guilty about it or anything.
No, because guilt's not a good thing either.
Right.
You have to, I tell people all the time, your life is the choices that you've made. Now, sometimes I'm going to choose to do something that I know isn't necessarily from my highest good in every area, but you know what? I want to do that. I'm going to do it. And I'll deal with the consequences, meaning tomorrow maybe I'll work out a little bit harder, or I'll fast tomorrow.
It's kind of like the cheat day in fitness. Like, cheat meal. I'll have a cheat meal and then I'll get back to my thing, and it's not that big of a deal. It's not that serious.
Right. You don't go back and beat yourself up for it. Or if you're going to make that phone call when you're not clear on what the intention is. Like I tell my young people, before you pick up the phone and call somebody, say, what is my intention of this call?
Right.
You're obviously very passionate about this topic. Do you see yourself starting a business ever again? Or is it something that you more so want to be kind of a thought leader on and empower other people to do that?
Full disclosure, I don't really want to start another business. Like, I don't. And I've been putting it out there. Like, I always say that because I work on myself so hard, that I do have a certain frequency and a vibration. And I kept waiting, like, okay, I'm just going to put that out there. I'm going to do what I do. I'm very fortunate that I get to speak at so many amazing venues and events. And even the last year, I've been paid very well for doing that. And at some point, that business partner is going to show up and is going to be the business partner wanting to do the business end of it. So that hasn't shown up exactly like that. So now I'm like, okay, I am so passionate about this. And I do want to curate other people because there's some amazing mind work out there that people are doing. But most of these therapists or life coaches, they're in a room every day from 8 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock at night. They're not building a platform on Facebook. They are not building a platform. They're getting people results every single day. So what I would love to do, and that's what, Lisa and I are doing, is that we are helping curate these people so that we can create some online programming so that when I do these talks or things like this, then people can go online and know that if I'm putting my stamp of approval on it, no different than on a fitness class, that it has value, that it has merits. Because there's a lot of stuff out there that honestly is, it feels good. I call it like spiritual tourism, or, when it might be a nice experience, but it doesn't really get you the transformation that we want. Because we want to get clarity, like to have a life that really is liberated. And you have to be able to illuminate some of the things that we don't want to see, so that we can connect to really our true essence, our heart, and not connect to all the things that are either from our conditioning from our youth, or conditioning from society, and conditioning of what does having it all really look like? So I see all these young women, especially, like trying to have it all. And it's daunting to me, like, where's the heart in it,
Well, I think if you wrote a book, it'd be pretty cool.
Oh, thank you. That's on the list, too.
Yeah.
14 years removed from, running this just behemoth of a business and, finding yourself, what do you see as kind of the next steps beyond just even, business or, mindfulness and spirituality? How do you see, the rest of your career looking like?
I'm just starting what I call the third act of my life. And I've really put a lot of thought into the energy of that. How I even want to celebrate the beginning. And I'm going away with about 30 women and to a little island that's very low key, not too glitzy. There'll be no makeup, no jewelry, no hoopla, but just a place to really connect. So for me, I'm really about connection. Like really connecting to myself, connecting to communities, connecting to people that want to hear what I want to talk about, what I'm passionate about. I don't really have like a hardcore business plan because I don't know, fortunately enough, I don't really need to make a living in that way. And I, like I said, I wasn't inspired of that when I didn't have money and I didn't have a certain level of freedom. I'm certainly not going to be inspired by that today. But what I am inspired by is bringing some of these people to people that I know can help them create more inner peace, more consciousness, make people realize that they can control their thoughts, their words, their feelings, their actions, their attitude, with tools to be able to do that. Because that's living a more conscious life. I watch people all the time. They're like, oh, Lavinia, I meditate. And I'm like, that's great. But then I see the way that they live, the way they connect or they disconnect, the way they treat people. I tell so much by going, even just for coffee with someone, the way they talk to the person behind the counter, the way they connect with people next to them, how quickly they get angry or impatient at something. And it's like, honey, you don't need to meditate. Work on this.
Yeah, I always thought it'd be pretty cool, like at some point, down the line, where each person, it was like affordable and sort of democratized, where each person had some sort of like holistic coach, like someone that can like look at every aspect of their life and really help them, because sometimes it's like you get to a point where I don't know, not that it's not that it's like a lot of damage has been done, and if you can most like a preventative thing, like from a younger age, have that, I think that would be pretty cool. Obviously, it's something that
I think it would be
humans.
Great if it was implemented right into the schools at a young age. Could you imagine if we had like a life skills class, but not a real life skills, where they were talking about these kind of things for people? I think that would change right from people are young to be able to have these. And then they have these same life skill classes that they offer the parents, because you can't, everybody has to evolve together.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. I think education also something that I've thought about was on the healthcare aspect as well, is how do you integrate that into healthcare? Because, I think in our society, at least in the United States, we're focused a lot on the physical health, right?
Yeah.
And getting all these blood tests done and all these scans done. Those are things that, we know we could see.
Get your annual checkup.
Right.
Yeah.
But, we've both, experienced people that, have had issues and that have ended their lives, et cetera, that we would have never known what they were going through because no scan, no blood test is going to see that.
Exactly.
Right. So how can we as a society, knowing these things that occur so regularly, how do we play a role in affecting some sort of change and having some sort of impact on both the educational and healthcare level, essentially meaning ultimately, changing the way government really runs, in this country. So I think that's something that hopefully in the 2020s, I'm curious to see your thoughts on. Hopefully that's something that we're talking about and actually doing more than just talking about it.
Because I think, especially now in our country with all the mental health issues, and I don't really know how much is nature or nurture. If it's like, if that person really does have
Both,
it in the brain
probably,
or, and I do think that there's such an opportunity to be able to help people, to be able to see things a little bit differently, to connect to their feelings, to their fears. I mean, I watch this all the time with people. They say, Lavinia, I'm a terrible manifester. I don't know why I can't manifest. And they're doing all the right things. Like if you were coaching them as a business coach, all their boxes would be checked. But the truth is, the energy and the vibration, they're still living in fear and scarcity. You can't be that energy of fear and scarcity and create great manifestation. It doesn't go. It's a different vibration. When people will sometimes be like, but it's true. I mean, when you are not constantly in fear, that fear is such a low vibration. It's one of the lowest energy vibrations that you can have. And that's why I say to people, like, connect to your heart. Like, just connect to your heart. I know people sometimes think it sounds a little soft touch, but you know what? I really believe Equinox, the magic was in the soft touch.
Right.
Like that guy who said, I'm offering them double of what you're paying and they're not leaving. Because they feel they've been heard, they've been listened to, they care.
Yeah.
Like there's been a heart. There was a heart there in creating that business. And I think that's what a lot of companies don't have.
But how do you, just to kind of discuss the fear thing, how do you overcome that, right? Like if you're someone who's grown up in, let's say a family that has never seen any sort of money, has always struggled, you're really like struggling to make ends meet. And for you, you're entrepreneurial, you want to do all these things, like you have these ideas in your head, but you always think to yourself, but how am I going to do it? Like how is that going to be possible if I can't live?
Or what happens if for some reason I fail and it doesn't manifest the way I want it to?
Right. So like that's a legitimate fear. How does one look past that or maybe even embrace it? I don't know.
Because sometimes you just have to focus on what it is you're doing in this present moment. Like just in this present moment, I'm working. Not everyone is going to be millionaire, or it feels like these young people all want to be billionaires, not even millionaires. That doesn't mean, that for me isn't what success is. And, I tell a lot of people when I'm mentoring them, I cannot help you become a millionaire. Like that is really out of my control. Unless I was going to invest in your company, even then there's no, but because part of it is just like the same thing with Equinox. Like who would have ever known?
Yeah, no.
You don't know. That's why, like, you have to shift from fear to faith. When you can shift, like, from fear to faith, like, I just have faith that it's all in divine order. I know it starts sounding a little weird, and it's all going to work out the way it's supposed to work out. I mean, it's an energetic shift that you have from fear to faith. Now, with faith, you've got to do your work. You have to make sure that you're, you
can't just let it be. Yeah.
No, I love when people say like, or they're dreaming. Like there's a difference between a dream and a fantasy. Like, how many boys who are 5'2" and want to be an NFL, NBA player, that's a fantasy.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure that everything is in check, and then you just have to do it and really do it with your heart, and you're connected and you're excited and you're inspiring people and motivating them. I mean, when I think about like when we would sit down and, talk about individual investors, like they would take these meetings and think like, I am not giving these three a penny. Like, I'm just not giving them any money. I don't believe in the gym business. I'm not. But it was our energy and our enthusiasm and our excitement. And that by the end, they were like calling up three of their friends saying, oh, we need to all come and invest in this. You know, that's what it takes. You have to like inspire people. But how can you inspire people if your energy is flat?
Like if you yourself don't believe that you could do it, why would anyone else believe?
Sometimes it isn't even that you can do it. Because I don't know if we thought all the time that we could do it.
Yeah.
But we were so passionate about what we were doing.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, we could be successful. We weren't thinking about the end goal. Like we were thinking about so many, they come in, they get results, they're happy, they're working out, they're people that, you know, and then we're just keep on explaining what we do and not the final thing of the success. Do you know what I mean?
100%.
There's so much, like, so many times I see this with young people all the time. Like, they spend so much time in the money, and their brands are mediocre. And I'm thinking, like, your brands are just mediocre, but you're spending so much time, the money, and the evaluation, how much money, like, why don't you put a little bit of energy on getting that product better? Like, and how is this product going to actually change someone's life? Because that's entrepreneurial to me, that this product is going to actually change someone's life. You can get people excited about that. But half the time, the products are mediocre and all the hoopla is on evaluation and money and how much. And I like, it's, there's such an incongruency there for me.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the patterns we've seen with a lot of the folks we've talked to on the show is, you know, at the moment, you don't really know what the future is going to look like when you're building out what you're building, but you're so focused on putting the best product or service or whatever might be out there that it just kind of ends up working out at the end of the day because you did all the best you could do to, again, like make a difference in whoever's lives you're making a difference in. So.
And then also, like, for the people who are just going to go and have a job somewhere, like, to go and, you know, I know everybody, the buzzword is like, show up in the best version of yourself, right?
Yeah.
But I believe that there's a shift. Like, it's not showing up in the best version of yourself. It's showing up in the authentic version. But you got to get down to that authentic version because so often, and I do believe that there is a big shift on that. Like, I believe that people are starting to realize, thank you to Brene Brown and Esther Perel and you know, Dr. Shafali, these amazing people that are out there talking about this, like, that we have to get in touch with that. And, you know, we've also learned that everything has shifted drastically. You know, years ago, people got so much even from their church. Mm-hmm. Like, that's where they got their hope. That's where they got fulfillment. They don't get that anymore. People aren't going to church like that. Definitely so not. They're getting it. They're actually looking to their work for that. So they're looking for the leadership to create that space where people really feel connected. They connected to hope. So going in there, and again, I feel like that's what we did at Equinox because, again, the people that came to work at gyms were in that time weren't like, oh, they were almost feeling like, I have nothing, I don't know what else I'll do.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it started shifting about 5 years in, but in the beginning it was that, you know. But what we did was we were so excited about what we were doing. And all of a sudden, even the cleaning girls who were just like the maintenance team, at first, like always feeling like I'm a maid. And 6 months into it, they were like, I work at Equinox. Like you could see, like they would walk down their street with their maintenance shirt on and so proud. It totally shifted who they were as human beings. Yeah. I know when they walked in their house at night, they were a whole different person than the maid. Yeah. Because like it was that excitement and enthusiasm in the culture. And I would say to them, like, ladies, or men, whatever, you guys are such a big part of this success here. When people write, I would show them the surveys. Look, they always comment about how amazing, how clean the club is. Yeah. Do you know the way you changed their whole life?
100%. And like you mentioned, like I love that you bring that up because like the church, you know, kind of shifting towards you're off, where you work, it's, people as human beings like crave that community, obviously, and you want people that you can that are there for you and love you, and want the best for you. But if you're not getting that, and you're at work like 90% of your day, you have to get it somewhere, right? And it seems like a lot of like that it's fundamentally broken in terms of how these corporations operate when it comes to the people.
Oh, it's painstaking to me. Like, I just listened to a story the other day about a guy who'd been with the company quite a few years, and they saw his behavior and they were just collecting it and creating a file. And then finally, that like the straw that broke the camel's back, and they bring him in and they fire him. Somebody that's been with this company for like from the beginning. And I'm like, I don't understand. How is it that you don't call this person in after the second time and just say to him, hey, what's going on? Like, I'm looking at you. 2 times, like, there's been, what is going on? He would have told you he was struggling with drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
But no, you're going to wait, and it keeps getting worse and worse. And now the file keeps getting bigger and bigger. Like, I just think to myself, like, no wonder your turnover is so high.
Yeah.
Like, there's no heart.
Right.
There's no loyalty. Like,
Yeah, you're not invested in your people. You're just sort of waiting till that person.
and then it's like, well, and the folder kept getting bigger. Like, I don't understand that at all. I don't understand that.
Lavinia, this has been such a phenomenal conversation, I think, on many levels.
I wish we could sit here and chat with you all day, because your story is so inspiring. And
Yeah. It's, the entrepreneurial journey, obviously, but more than that, it's what made you such a good entrepreneur, such a great entrepreneur, was that heart. I think that's something that people lack these days when they go into business, whether they're working for someone or they're working for themselves, is they do things without intention. And I think that's something that every person, whether you're an entrepreneur or not listening right now, we talk about it all the time, is just do things with intention. Even if it's the wrong thing at the end of the day and it results in something you didn't want, it's fine, because you can then move on. You made a mistake, you'll pick it up and you'll do something else. But I think that doing things with purpose, doing things with a vision is, I think, the key to whatever you do, whether it's in business, in life, in your relationships. And I think, I personally got a lot out of this episode, and I'm sure our audience and Pat and everybody else did as well. So thank you so much for your knowledge, your experience, your wisdom, and we hope that you continue to share that with the rest of the world.
Thanks, Lavinia.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.